If you have been paying attention for the last few months, you've probably noticed something strange, something missing. The constant noise, the endless rallies, the erratic travel schedule that defined Donald Trump's entire political existence, it just stopped. Silence. And if you're sitting there thinking, well, maybe he's just actually governing for once, I have some bad news for you. He isn't working. He's hiding. And he isn't just hiding, he is currently overseeing the construction of a $300 million personal monument to himself, while his own inner circle, the people who actually put him in power, are absolutely losing their minds. You honestly cannot script this level of absurdity. We are talking about a report that just dropped from the Daily Beast that paints a picture of a White House in total chaotic disarray. But not the usual Trump is yelling at the TV kind of disarray. This is different. This is the president has checked out of reality disarray. According to his own allies, Donald Trump has become increasingly isolated, effectively cutting off contact with the MAGA base that he claims to love so much. The rallies are gone, the FaceTime with voters is gone, and in its place, a fixation, an obsession, really, with building a massive new ballroom where the East Wing used to be. Yeah, you heard that right. While the country is dealing with the fallout of his economic policies, while his supporters are waiting for that revenge tour they were promised, the President of the United States is reportedly locked in a room with blueprints, arguing about marble and chandeliers for a party palace that you are paying for. Actually, let me correct that. You aren't just paying for it. Do you want to know who is funding the rest of it? The donors.
And not just any donors. We aren't talking about the forgotten men and women sending in $5. We are talking about big tech. We are talking about defense contractors. The very globalist elites he spent 2 years screaming about on the campaign trail are now cutting checks to build him a ballroom. Apple, Google, Meta, they are literally buying the bricks for his vanity project. It is the ultimate grift. It is the quiet part not just being said out loud, but being carved into stone on the White House lawn. And this is why his allies are panicked. They aren't worried about the ethics. We know they don't care about that. They are freaking out because they know that Trump is a creature of attention. If he stops the rallies, if he stops the travel, if he stops feeding the beast, the movement starves. They are watching their leader trade his political capital for a literal construction project. They are watching him ghost the American voter to play SimCity White House edition. And the worst part, he doesn't care. He has the title, he has the power, and now he's building the palace. If you thought the first term was a circus, buckle up, because this time the clown has locked the doors and he's busy decorating the tent while the rest of the world burns. So let's get into the weeds here, because when you actually strip away the sensationalism and look at the raw data, when you look at the timeline, the money, and the quotes, it somehow manages to be even worse than the headline suggests. We need to talk about the specifics of this Daily Beast report, because the details are devastating. The report published this morning cites multiple high-level sources within the Trump transition team and the current White House staff. And the phrase they keep coming back to isn't bold strategy. It isn't new direction. The phrase is freaking out. One senior aide, someone who has been with Trump since 2016, mind you, is quoted as saying he is completely unreachable. Unless you are holding a blueprint or a check for the ballroom, you cannot get a meeting.
Let that sink in for a second. We are facing a looming debt crisis. We have geopolitical instability in Eastern Europe that is spiraling. We have a healthcare system that is teetering on the edge, and the President of the United States is reportedly unreachable unless you are there to discuss sconces. But here is where it stops being funny and starts being forensic. Let's look at the money. Because, as always with Donald Trump, if you want to know the truth, you don't listen to what he says, you look at who is writing the checks. During the campaign, and I know you remember this because he said it every single day, Donald Trump told us that big tech was the enemy of the people. He told us that Facebook, Google, and Apple were part of a liberal cartel designed to silence conservatives. He explicitly promised on stage to break them up. He called them the censorship industrial complex. Do we remember that? Good. Now let's look at the donor list for the Presidential Ballroom Trust, which is the dark money vehicle established to fund this $300 million renovation. Who's on the list? It's not the grassroots. It's not the forgotten man. The top tier of donors, the Platinum Founders, as they're calling them, includes undisclosed entities tied directly to the lobbying arms of Apple, Google, and Meta. You literally cannot make this up. The exact same companies he swore to destroy are now financing the room where he plans to host his galas. And do you think they're writing those checks out of the goodness of their hearts? Do you think Tim Cook and Mark Zuckerberg just really care about the square footage of the East Wing?
Of course not. They are buying insurance. They are buying access. And judging by the silence from the White House on antitrust regulation since the election, it looks like they got exactly what they paid for. This is the definition of pay to play. It is the swampiest, most corrupt transaction imaginable. You build me my palace, and I'll forget about those regulations I promised my voters. And it gets worse. We need to talk about the physical reality of what this project actually entails, because the media is glazing over this part. This isn't just a renovation. This isn't a fresh coat of paint. To build a ballroom of this scale, we are talking about a space designed to hold 2,000 people. They had to authorize the demolition of significant portions of the East Wing infrastructure. We are talking about historical architecture. We are talking about the Jacqueline Kennedy Garden, which has been ripped up, literally bulldozed, to lay the foundation for what insiders are calling the MAGA Hall. Think about the symbolism of that. Jacqueline Kennedy's garden represented grace, history, and a respect for the institution of the White House. It was about the country. This ballroom? It's about him. It is a physical manifestation of his ego, crushing the history of the presidency. And what is the justification? The White House press secretary, when they finally deigned to give a comment, claimed that the current facilities were inadequate for the stature of the new administration. Inadequate? The White House has hosted kings, queens, prime ministers, and peace treaties for 2 centuries. It was good enough for FDR. It was good enough for Reagan. It was good enough for Lincoln. But apparently it's not good enough for Donald Trump's vanity. But the most damning piece of evidence in this report, the thing that proves this is a fatal error and not just a quirk, is the timeline of his schedule.
I want to show you the numbers. In the first month following his 2016 victory, Donald Trump held 9 thank you rallies. He was everywhere. He was on camera, he was on Twitter, he was in the Rust Belt. In the month following his 2024 victory, 0. Not 1. The Daily Beast report confirms that his travel schedule has been reduced by 90% compared to his first-term transition. He hasn't visited a single swing state. He hasn't held a single town hall. This is what has the allies screaming. They realize that the connection Trump had with his base was entirely performative. It was a show. And now that the show has served its purpose, now that he has the keys to the house, he has canceled the subscription. He doesn't need the applause anymore because he has the power. So when you see MAGA insiders panicking, understand that they aren't panicking because they think he's doing a bad job. They are panicking because they have been exposed. They spent 8 years telling us that this man was a populist hero who cared about the working class, and the exact moment he got back into power, he handed the bill to the working class, handed the keys to big tech, and locked himself in a room to look at curtain swatches. It is a betrayal of the highest order. And the evidence isn't hidden in some secret server. It is happening right in front of our faces in the form of a $300 million receipt. But here is the thing regarding the panic coming from these MAGA insiders. And this is the part that frankly drives me up the wall. They're acting shocked. They're acting like this behavior, the isolation, the vanity, the obsession with construction over legislation is some sort of sudden, unpredictable shift in Donald Trump's character. They're acting like they bought a ticket to see a populist hero and accidentally ended up with a corrupt real estate developer.
Give me a break. If you zoom out, if you stop looking at the ballroom as a singular event and start looking at it as a data point in a 50-year timeline, you realize that this isn't a glitch. This isn't a mistake. This is a feature. This is exactly who Donald Trump has always been, and this is exactly how he has always operated. let's take a walk down memory lane, shall we? Because the media has the memory of a goldfish, but we don't. We remember. The narrative that Trump's allies are selling right now is that he has changed. They claim that the isolation is a new development. But is it? Or is this just the inevitable endpoint of a man who views every single interaction in his life as transactional? Look at the pattern. It is undeniable. In the 1980s and 90s, how did Trump operate? He didn't build things to last. He didn't build things to serve a community. He built monuments to his own name, leveraging massive amounts of other people's money, usually leaving a trail of bankruptcy and stiffed contractors in his wake. Remember the Trump Taj Mahal? It was supposed to be the eighth wonder of the world. It was flashy, it was gold, it was expensive, and it was a financial disaster that hurt the local economy while he walked away with millions in fees. Fast forward to his first term, what was the very first thing he did regarding the presidency and his properties? He didn't divest, he didn't put his assets in a blind trust like every other ethical president in history. No, he turned the Trump International Hotel in D.C. into the de facto clubhouse for the Republican Party. He signaled to every lobbyist, every foreign diplomat, and every sycophant that if you wanted a favor from the king, you had to pay tribute at the king's castle. You had to book the rooms. You had to buy the steaks. You had to put money directly into his pocket. So why is anyone surprised that he's doing it again? The only difference is the scale. In the first term, he monetized his hotel. In the second term, he is monetizing the White House itself. The $300 million ballroom is just the logical evolution of the Mar-a-Lago membership hikey. It's the same grift, just with a bigger budget and the presidential seal slapped on the door. And let's talk about this isolation that has his allies so terrified. They claim he's abandoning the base because he stopped doing rallies. They're framing this as a political miscalculation. But it's much darker than that. The reality, and this is the hard pill that the MAGA base refuses to swallow, is that Donald Trump has never liked his supporters. He loves the applause, he loves the votes, he loves the power they give him, but he does not like them. We have the receipts on this. We have years of reporting from his own former staffers, people like Stephanie Grisham, people like John Kelly, who have confirmed that behind closed doors, he mocks the very people who wear his hats. He has complained about them looking low class. He has expressed disgust at their appearance. So now that the election is over, now that he can't run again, now that he has extracted the vote and secured the immunity he needed, why would he spend his time in a fairground in Iowa? Why would he spend his Saturday night shaking hands with people he views as beneath him?
He doesn't have to anymore. The transaction is complete. You gave him the vote. He gave you nothing. But he got what he wanted. So now he retreats. He goes back to the people he actually wants to impress. The billionaires, the tech giants, the elites. This is the pattern of the abusive relationship that defines modern conservatism. The leader tells the base that he loves them, that only he can save them, that the world is against them. He isolates them from reality. And then the moment he secures their loyalty, he uses their credit card to buy himself a gold watch and locks them out of the house. And that brings us to the most dangerous part of this pattern, the purging of the no men. The reason Trump is surrounded by architects and yes men right now, and the reason he's ignoring his political advisors, is because he has spent the last decade systematically removing anyone who tells him the truth. Think about who is left in his orbit. In the first term, for all the chaos, there were guardrails. There were people who would say, "Mr. President, you can't do that. It's illegal." Or, "Mr. President, that's a bad idea. It will hurt the polls." Those people are gone. They have been fired, demonized, or pushed out. Who is left? The enablers, the grifters, the people who look at a $300 million vanity project funded by big tech and say, "Great idea, sir. Would you like it in velvet or silk?" This isolation isn't an accident. It is a strategy. He has constructed a bubble where his whims are treated as laws. He doesn't want governance, he wants obedience. And a ballroom is the perfect symbol of that. A ballroom isn't for debating policy. A ballroom isn't for signing legislation. A ballroom is for holding court. It is for being adored by people who paid for the privilege of being there. So when these all eyes complain that he's distracted, they are missing the point. He isn't distracted. He is finally doing exactly what he always wanted to do. He is playing king. And the tragedy here isn't just the money. The tragedy is that while he plays king, the country is on autopilot. We have seen this before in history, when a leader becomes obsessed with their own legacy, with building monuments, with isolating themselves from the public, governance collapses. The boring stuff gets ignored. Infrastructure crumbles, diplomacy fails, crises go unmanaged because the person at the top is too busy looking in the mirror. We saw it with the response to COVID. When the crisis hit, was he focused on the logistics of testing? No, he was focused on his TV ratings. He was focused on how the press briefings made him look. And now we are seeing it again. The economy is flashing warning signs. The world is on fire. And the president is MIA, buried under a pile of blueprints, funded by the very corporations he swore to fight. It is the ultimate con. The populist mask has fallen off, and underneath, it's just another elitist landlord trying to renovate a property he doesn't respect with money he didn't earn, while the tenants, the American people, are left wondering why the heat just got turned off. And this brings us to the part of the conversation that nobody wants to have, but we absolutely must have. Because if you think this is just about a ballroom, if you think this is just about some gaudy chandeliers and a few angry donors, you are missing the forest for the trees. We have to ask the terrifying question: if the president is not doing the job, who is?
This is the end game. This is the stakes. When a president isolates himself to this degree, when he cuts off his own political advisors, when he refuses to travel, when he spends his days with architects instead of generals, it creates a power vacuum. And in Washington, D.C., a power vacuum never stays empty for long. It gets filled. So, who is filling it? We already know who paid for the room. Apple, Google, the defense contractors, the corporate oligarchy. If Donald Trump is checked out, if he is treating the presidency like a retirement home with a really nice view, then the people actually running the executive branch are the unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats and donors who wrote the checks. We are witnessing the birth of a shadow presidency. While Trump is busy picking out drapes for the East Wing, who is making the decisions on AI regulation? The companies that funded the ballroom. Who is making the decisions on military contracts? The defense firms that donated to the renovation fund. He has effectively outsourced the job of commander-in-chief to the highest bidder. He provides the signature, they provide the policy. It is the dream scenario for every corporate lobbyist in existence. A president who is too distracted by his own vanity to actually read the executive orders he is signing. And this leads us to a constitutional crisis that we are completely unprepared for. We talk a lot about the 25th Amendment in this country. Usually we talk about it in the context of medical inability, a stroke, a coma, a cognitive decline. But the framers of the Constitution were also terrified of something else. They were terrified of dereliction of duty. They were terrified of a president who simply refuses to do the work.
If a president is unreachable to his own staff during a global crisis because he is looking at blueprints, is he discharging the powers and duties of his office? If a president dismantles the seat of government to build a party hall, is he preserving, protecting, and defending the Constitution? The answer is obvious. He is not. But because he still has a pulse, and because he still has the nuclear codes, we are supposed to pretend this is normal? We are supposed to pretend that having an absentee landlord in the Oval Office is sustainable for 4 years? It isn't. And here is the warning. Here is the reality of what happens next if this goes unchecked. History tells us exactly how this story ends. When authoritarian leaders become isolated, when they surround themselves with sycophants and build monuments to themselves while the people suffer, the government rots from the inside out. Competence vanishes. Corruption explodes. Because when the leader signals that the only thing that matters is him, every person down the chain of command starts stealing what they can. If the boss is looting the East Wing, why shouldn't the cabinet secretary loot the agency budget? Why shouldn't the regulator take a bribe? The moral rot starts at the head, and right now, the head is rotting in real time. We are looking at a second term that isn't defined by America first, it is defined by Trump only. And the danger is that by the time his supporters realize they've been conned, by the time they realize the revenge tour was just a fundraising pitch for a construction project, the damage to our institutions will be irreversible.
So do not let them gaslight you into thinking this is just Trump being Trump. Do not let the media treat this like a quirky lifestyle segment about interior design. This is a 5-alarm fire. We have a president who has abandoned his post to build a palace. We have a government being auctioned off to the donors he claimed to hate. And we have a Republican Party too terrified of his base to say a word, even as they scream in panic behind closed doors. The ballot box is closed for 4 years. We cannot vote him out tomorrow, but we can refuse to look away. We can refuse to normalize the idea that the White House is a construction site for one man's ego. Watch the money, watch the silence, and most importantly, watch who walks through the doors of that ballroom when it opens, because that is who is running your country now. I'm Ethan Cole. Don't just watch. Subscribe, because we are going to be tracking every single dollar, every single donor, and every single day of this absence. See you in the next one.